In this video, we're going to break down some of the actual deliverables that UX designers and researchers create for their clients. Personas are a way of representing a typical user of your application or website in a way that's meaningful to the design team. While personas can be an important part of the design process, they can also be controversial. After all, personas take time to make, and they're often based not on a single user, but an aggregation of different users that you've interviewed. In other words, a true persona represents behavior patterns that repeat across different user types and are generally independent of typical marketing demographics such as age or income. To get the most out of your personas, focus on specific behaviors that relate to your app's purpose and use them as a brainstorming point for features that might help the user deal with specific problems they're trying to solve. User flows are a way of visually representing how a user gets from point A to point B in an application or website. They can be extremely simple, like the example on the left, or they can involve many possible decision points and user states, like the example on the right. Create a user flow whenever you're dealing with a major task in your product, particularly if it might have multiple ways to accomplish that task or would involve very specific error states. Sitemaps are a way of representing the different pages of your website's information architecture and are useful for aligning stakeholders on the content that will actually be created for the website. As more websites are built on content management systems, it's important to note when content represents a single page versus a dynamic list of content. In this example, you can see the stacked boxes being used to denote a page that will be built from a dynamic list. Content models are specifically useful for working with content management systems. They provide a way of breaking down a wireframe or a web layout into a set of repeatable fields, reusable components, and other important factors of the individual content type being created. Sketches are one of the most common and most important things that UX designers create. Sketches can start as simple representations of a wireframe or a content model. They can also be used to create personas or user flows. The point of sketching is to get ideas out onto the page or the whiteboard as quickly as possible and to be able to use them to discuss things and refine them with your team prior to creating higher fidelity deliverables. As screen sketches get refined and discussed, they turn into wireframes. A wireframe is a low to medium fidelity mock-up of the information that will appear in a given screen. The most important thing in creating effective wireframes is to have as much of the actual content for the page as you can. While using dummy text can be useful in the sketching phase, getting the real content during the wireframing process can save time and budget in the long run by helping you understand what you're really dealing with. Specifications expand on wireframes by including annotations, such as links, touch gestures, and error states. Specifications are useful when working in waterfall scenarios or in situations where prior approval is needed before products get built. In a waterfall development scenario, design requirements gathering and user experience happens in a separate phase before development begins. This is what's traditionally known as throwing wireframes or comps over the wall to the developers. It's also sometimes referred to as big design up front. A prototype is similar to a wireframe, but it's more interactive. The idea with a prototype is to simulate as much of the real experience as you can without investing huge amounts of time into building out functionality. Prototypes are essential to the testing process and can help your team save significant amounts of development time and resources by fixing usability problems and testing ideas before development actually begins.